Hello, everybody. Hamlin here. Today we're taking a look at inflation. That's our topic for Senior Econ. We're going to look at rising prices, price indexes, a little bit of calculation on inflation, but not too much, and cause and effect. And so here we go. Inflation, general increase in prices. Basically, gasoline can go up from $2 a gallon to $3 a gallon. That jump in price signals inflation. Purchasing power is the ability to purchase goods and services. Typically, it's how much I can, how much I can get for what I spend. Of course, with rising prices, my purchasing power decreases. When prices fall, my purchasing power increases. Keeping in mind that I've always got the same wages. If my wages change, the whole equation changes. Price level is the relative cost of goods and services in the entire economy at a given point in time. And so we can measure every month, every quarter, every year price levels. We take a look at goods and services in a basket of sorts. We look at those prices and we can tell based on inflation whether we've got more purchasing power or less. The price index is a measure that shows how average prices of a group of goods change over time. And so again, here we go. We're taking a look at what prices are doing, how they're affecting our spending, our buying power. Consumer Price Index is a CPI. Every month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates this, and we usually get a report. If you're watching the nightly news, sometimes they'll announce the CPI for the month. More often than not, you're going to find it in financial programs, financial publications. But the Consumer Price Index really tells us what's going on in our economy. And inflation is an important thing. If people have less spending power, less buying power because their money doesn't go as far, due to higher prices, then all of a sudden you're going to see people struggling. And so inflation can be a bad thing. By the same token, inflation can be a good thing. Inflation actually shows growth in an economy. If my wages go up and keep pace with the percent of inflation or change in prices, then things are good. We're seeing growth in the economy. It doesn't change my spending power. On the other hand, if my wages don't keep pace with inflation, in other words, maybe inflation goes, the prices and the CPI go up 3% for the month, but my wages only went up 2%. I lost 1% of spending power in the deal. And so inflation can be bad when it outpaces your earnings. But if your earnings keep up with inflation, or if your earnings are more than inflation, it's a good thing. CPI is a market basket of goods. What they do is look at the urban consumer. They look at all the stuff they buy, from toilet paper to food to clothing to gasoline and on and on and on. The stuff that we buy every day, it basically is part of the composite of the Consumer Price Index. They take and factor the price changes for all those goods together. Changes in the CPI from month to month help economists measure the economy's inflation rate. And so again, the inflation rate is a percentage change in price level over time. Inflation can be good. It shows growth in an economy as long as wages keep pace with the inflation rate. If inflation outpaces wages, then we've got trouble. Here's how I calculate inflation. I'm not going to worry about that necessarily. I don't want you to worry about it. The bottom line is they look at the CPI for 1 year. They take out the CPI for the second year. They divide it out, multiply by 100, and you can see here they come up with a percentage or a rate then. And so the inflation rate, what they're really doing is just calculating a percentage change in the goods and services. There's 3 different causes of inflation. This is very important. You're going to want to write this down. Quantity theory basically states that there's too much money in the economy. What will happen is the government might lower the interest rate, allowing people, the Fed could lower it, allowing people to be able to borrow more money. Borrowing that money, the money goes out in quantity to be spent. In other words, I might not buy a new car if the interest rate is 5%. But if the Fed lowers the rate and the banks lower the rate to 4%, I might buy a car. So I'm going to go get that money, get that loan, and spend that money. The spending will cause the prices to go up. And so putting money out there, and in effect, if I put the money out there, whether it's in loans, whether it's in giving people subsidies or grants, whatever the case may be, stimulus checks, you put the money out there, it's usually spent. And when that's spent, you see the quantity theory of inflation. Now, keep in mind, as long as the money supply grows at the same rate that the economy grows, you won't have a problem, because when the economy grows, typically people's wages go up and the spending is a good thing, so it drives itself upward. The problem comes when the quantity theory puts the money out there through loans, but people can't pay the loans back. The people's wages don't pace with inflation, or the economy doesn't grow even though the money has gone out there. That's happened before, and as a result, then you've got quantity theory caused inflation, and it can be a bad thing. Cost push theory we've talked about before. You probably recognize this. With cost push theory, inflation occurs when producers raise the prices to meet increased costs. In other words, maybe I'm Mario at the pizza parlor and the price of cheese goes up. I'm not going to take the hit out. I've got to raise my prices. I'm going to pass that increase on the price of cheese onto the price of my pizza, and you're going to pick it up as a consumer. In other words, I'm pushing the cost from me to you. Taxes will do that as well. Maybe they raised the taxes or they raised my rent. I'm not going to take the hit on my profits. I'm going to pass this on to you by raising prices. The problem you run into is what's called the wage price spiral. Wages, the rising wages are going to cause higher prices, but then the higher prices cause higher wages. It can be a good thing as long as everybody's keeping pace. Unfortunately, in many cases with inflation, we have to control it because the people that make a lot of money are just fine. Your upper class. Your middle class usually survives okay. The people on the bottom are the ones that get crushed. And so cost push theory happens. Wage price spirals can be a dangerous thing. It can also demonstrate growth. The demand pull theory is the final theory that we look at. Basically what happens is prices go up because more people want it than what can be supplied. If you remember back to our supply and demand curves, the prices move as demand moves. And so if you've got a good out there and all of a sudden it's a hot thing and everybody wants it, let's say that it's a particular type of car, maybe these electronic cars that you find. All of a sudden everybody wants the thing. And so what happens? Well, the manufacturer is going to raise the price of that car because they recognize everybody wants it. And so when everybody wants things, when everybody's spending, they're going out to get things, that pushes prices up as well. We call it demand pull theory. The demand, increased demand, pulls the prices up. Again, up is inflation. So quantity theory, it's putting more money out in the economy. Every year, I've got students that say, Hamlin, why don't we just make more money? You can't because it causes quantity theory inflation. Cost push theory is where I incur a cost. I don't want to incur the cost or take on the cost, so I raise my prices and push it out to you, the consumer, with me being the producer. And finally, demand pull. Everybody wants what I've got, so I'm raising that price. Those are your three causes of inflation. High inflation is a major economic problem. When inflation rates change greatly from year to year, you'll see that. In an inflationary economy, if people's wages aren't keeping up, the dollar loses its value. Either way, it loses value. A dollar used to be able to buy me, a gallon of gas. Now, it buys me about a half a gallon of gas. And so my dollar is losing value. My dollar doesn't buy the same amount of goods that maybe it did in the past. I'm okay if my wages keep pace, but if they don't, inflationary economies, purchasing power can be reduced. It can be a bad thing. Interest rates, when the interest rates match inflation rates, savers break even. In other words, you save the money, you spend the money, you're making the rate, you're getting the money on your savings account to offset the higher prices. When a bank's interest rate is lower than the inflation rate, savers lose money. Now, it doesn't make sense for me to put the money in the bank because I'm losing value. The interest rate isn't keeping pace and growing my account at the same rate that the prices are growing. Finally, with income, if wage increases match the inflation rate, things are good. It's natural growth. But again, as we said before, if your income's fixed and it doesn't vary or move, if it doesn't increase when prices go up, then you get harmed. And so that's inflation for you. Again, we'll be talking about this in class. Please watch this as soon as possible. Tune in every day if you can with me, and we'll talk about inflation because I know you're going to have questions. But with that, we wrap up inflation. Have a good one.